Jack Silvagni has once again followed in the footsteps of his dad. He is a St Kilda Saint and is one of the first free agent player moves we've seen this off-season. Hey, it's MJ from the Coaches Panel. Welcome back to the channel as we yet again help you look at every single player that moves clubs, whether it be via the free agency mechanism that Jack has gone for, whether it be a trade, and then look at what it means for the club they've left, the club they've landed at, and also the big focus around what it means from an AFL Fantasy and SuperCoach perspective heading into a brand new season. Yep, he's moved clubs. He's just following his dad. First following the footsteps as a father-son at Carlton, and now his dad jumps over to St Kilda. His dad's not playing, but he might as well follow too, right? What does this mean for St Kilda, and how is this all going to play out? We'll get to that in a moment, but looking back at his year, just pure fantasy stuff for a moment. Mid-60s average is okay in AFL Fantasy. 93 was the top score. 5 of those 13 games were 70 plus, so not awesome, but not horrific either. And there was a little bit of time where he was kind of thrown positionally around a little bit. They did like the look of him at Carlton in that defensive line. That's where he probably played arguably his best career football. Gave Weitering finally some support inside that defensive 50. And then, of course, breaks his hand, goes on later in the year, has to get surgery, gets a plate put in it, has some groin issues. Just the club just scrub him out for the rest of the year off the back of that. So not as much footy as he wanted to play, but still some handy moments through there. If you want to know what he did in SuperCoach, there is 2 tons there last season in the higher 70s average, like a 76.9. So again, not awesome, but not horrific. That said too, what does this mean for the club that he's landed at? Well, St Kilda is going an absolute undeniable overhaul at the moment. It could be as many as 10 player movement in and out for this club. They're clearly changing up a lot of things. And this defensive line, I think, is going to undergo, like all areas of the team, a little bit of a rescope and a reshape. Personally, I think he lands into this backline a little bit, but there is a world you could see him being redeployed back as that kind of second tall forward alongside of a Max King and then moving into that relief ruck role, depending on what happens around a Rowan Marshall. And I think this is why St Kilda ultimately attracted to him, is he's such a utility and he can play in a multitude of different positions. And given the assets they've got coming around, there's a world where this takes place. Now, I don't think it's probably the number one outlet option, but I think it's a possibility. And the reason I would say that is they're also getting in Lekalia to come into this backline, Callum Wilkie staying put, and they've heavily invested in the draft capital of an Alex Tyree 12 months ago. And so they've got some nice height in this backline. And what Silvagni can at least offer is a little bit of a lockdown support for Wilkie and letting the likes of a Tyree become really the flying Viking that he is and being the interceptor. So I think that's probably where it kind of lands. But there is a possibility where they put some extra expectation on Aaliyah. They're going to pay him a lot of money, Wilkie a lot of money, Tyree, they're heavily invested in. So that is a possibility. Remembering they've experimented a lot with their positions. Kamanides also moved back and forward over time. I think he's just going to become depth now. The variance of Rowan Marshall obviously impacts a lot, but I'm going to be fascinated to see how this looks. He's clearly best 22 or 23 now, should I say, for JSOS. But there's a world where you could argue both. Politely, I'm not too sure he's worried, but I've seen the best of him as that number 2 key position defender. So I think that's where he's going to play his best footy. Whether or not that's how St Kilda choose to structure it, we'll have to wait and see. From a Carlton perspective, they've got an awesome set of compensation for him. Clearly hit the metrics that hit all the markers financially to get that compensation pick that they've been awarded. But my, oh my, Carlton fans, talk to me. If you're watching this on YouTube, comment below. Change my mind because I don't like what this is about to be for you, but I'm open to having my mind changed. If you're listening to this as an audio podcast, comment, get in touch with us across socials. The details are in the description of this episode. But I'm nervous for you, Carlton fans, about how this is going to help. You've tried so many options back there to give Weitering support, and nothing's really worked. I know the absence of Nick Newman this year really hurt your ball movement out of defensive 50, but it's It's not good. McGovern's not the answer. Cowan's not got the height. Haynes, we know at his best, while he's got that 190 plus centimetre height, 192, he just doesn't have that lockdown capacity. He is more of the interceptor and defender second, with offensive aerialist first. Carroll played the role okay at times this year. There is some decency about O'Farrell. I know there's some expectation internally in the club that he might be an outlet too, but man, it's why someone like a Stephen May's been linked to the club, even if it's just for a year, to develop something underneath a little bit more. But Weitering needs support. JSOS was that. I'm not confident yet on the list. You've got that. Prove me wrong, Carlton fans. Very much open to it, but I feel nervous for you with this absence. We've known it's been coming now for the better part of 2 months, but yeah, this is not looking good for you. But what does it mean for us in the fantasy footy community and SuperCoach and AFL Fantasy? Look, in classic or your salary cap formats, you're just not going there, right? Now, I know St Kilda are a really fantasy favourable team. Number 4 in the league for marks by average. Lots of uncontested possessions, lots of ball movement. Very, very favourable in those regards. But as I've mentioned, they've got some great offensive assets that sit in this halfback and playmaking role. Sinclair, to a lesser extent, and Isaiah Wanganeen-Miller, who I think is becoming more and more of a midfield outlet and a midfield option for them. And then you've got those interceptors in Tyroo. Wilkie can do that, and soon to be added if the trade lands, which I've got no reason to doubt that it won't, in a Leclerc. There's just not going to be that volume, nor the necessity, if he plays in that back line, to be able to do that. And again, if he does play as the number 2 forward, I just don't think that's the best spot for him. I've seen his best football in defence. I think that's why the Saints have targeted him. I just don't think you're going there. Yeah, there's maybe, if a few things break right for him, that you want to head there, that maybe in draft, depending on the depth of your league. Okay, maybe as a late flyer, but politely, fantasy-wise, it's just not relevant. Structurally, I'm fascinated to see how St Kilda do this, because you can build a pretty compelling case either way. And for Carlton, yeah, just think it's another piece where there's pain coming your way. But tell me what you think. How does this structure up for the team he's landed at St Kilda? What does this mean for the one he's left at the Blues? I don't think he's fantasy relevant at all, but change my mind. Comment and let me know what you think. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. Every single player that moves clubs this trade and off-season period through free agency or trade, we're going to review them for what the impacts are and the fantasy footy outlet opportunities that flow from all of them. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back soon with another player that's moved clubs this trade and free agency period.